You got your hand up first.
Yes. There's a comment that I have written in many emails to our little friends, and it is, if somebody gets something for nothing, then somebody gets nothing for something. And you were talking about the free medical care, and all over the place you were talking about it. And I cannot believe it. And you know what? As far as these children, and I consider them the children, going and using the medical care, not smartly, using their head, they haven't been taught. And we need to get back to the basics. We as moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas, we need to teach these kids. That's all I have to say. I have more.
Well, let me address your comment. You know, you've got the conservative Bibles there at the seat next to you, right? Benjamin Franklin said, once upon a time, he said, "As for myself, I am good to the poor. But as for poverty, we must entice or drive them from it." I don't think it's compassionate to give things to people when we haven't earned it. Everyone needs to be responsible for buying their own house and paying their own damn mortgage.
There's a great book. It's called the Proper Role of Government by Isaac Benson, and in that he specifically talks about Bastiat talks about legal plunder. Just because the government can impose a tax doesn't make it right. And I've always argued that true compassion never comes at somebody else's expense. I too believe, you know, before my dad retired a year ago, he was getting Medicaid patients from Logan to St. George, because he was one of the few that would take the Medicaid patients. But it's one thing if you give it voluntarily, but when it's forced, and that's one of the things that I learned in the Soviet Union. My wife grew up in the Soviet Union where they were forced to work on collective farms, forced to basically try to have charity. And she's amazed at the volunteerism that we have in this country. And if we start to enforce this, that volunteerism will go away. It's even Senator Hatch's new plan that he did, you know, you get paid for volunteerism. It's not volunteerism. No, it's not volunteerism. And it comes back to that, you actually get robbed of the joy of helping somebody. And so, you know, you look at what happened in the 1960s when we had the first Medicaid. We used to have all these charity hospitals. It's not like people were not getting the operations. And one of the saddest things that I ever saw, just recently, I just saw on the news, Shriners Hospital, that for years has been giving free medical care, has finally started to say, hey, if you can, we'll take your insurance, we'll take whatever we can, just because you cannot compete with the federal government. And so this whole thing is, they're just going to have a single payer option. As soon as they have an option, it pushes everybody else out. And so don't let them, and that's what I think the fallback will be is, well, we'll just have it an option. If it's an option, it's going to grow. And so that's where you have to fight the battle right now.
Mine's a comment and a question. I wrote to the legislature. I have a way to send email to everybody in one fell swoop. And I said it was back when this bill was coming forth, taking federal money and letting people use it to put down their houses. And this got into my cross something fierce, because basically what it's doing is it's making me pay. I'm contributing to helping them buy their house, and all of a sudden I've got another house payment on a house that I can't guarantee they're going to keep, because the foreclosure rate keeps climbing. And so I don't know how they're going to maintain their value if the house. So I'm a part owner in it de facto. So I sent an email to the legislature, and I explained the purpose behind this compassion. Well, I didn't actually. The first email, because there was a couple. The first email I went up to him and I said, hey, this is wrong, and because you're making me take on another house payment, now you can't guarantee me that these people are going to keep it, et cetera, et cetera. And then I got somebody, one of them, wrote me back and said, I will pray for your lack of compassion for your fellow man. And I just, you know, my keyboard started burning, because then I just went and I lectured them on compassion and its true role. it's forcing it, it's pulling money out of us to pay for them. So they're taking from us, and I don't have a problem helping them, but when you force me to do it, I have a problem when you force me. And what they're doing is they're forcing me now with this healthcare thing. They're forcing all of us to do something we're not gangbusters on because we know it's going to fail. It's a failed process. So here's my question. The federal dollars that we get, because Utah's accepted target money, my city did. We send out lobbyists to go get money. And my concern is there's always hooks when the federal government gives you money. The 10th Amendment, the Patrick Henry Caucus, I want to know that every 10th Amendment movement that has happened in the States has been resolutions with no teeth.
Right.
What teeth are you going to put in place with this caucus to tell them to back off?
But that's one of the, actually, if you read the literature, is that we are past resolution. Resolutions just make you feel good. First off, welcome to the world of politics. I've been called a racist, a fascist, uncompassionate, unchristian, and a fomented mouse zealot. And so, I mean, that's just part of it. If you take the opposite of liberal, and that's primarily because, yeah, because of my role in illegal immigration. That's one of the issues that I've kind of stepped up to. I thought that my wife being a legal immigrant, my business partner being a black Ethiopian Jew would stop those comments, but it hasn't stopped those comments. So you get, yeah. So you still get those, but here's the problem, and I'll be frank about it. Here's the problem that we get. The state of Utah has a budget of about $10 billion. About $5 billion of that dollars comes from the federal government. And so we're faced with those same things with No Child Left Behind. We often talk a good fight, saying we don't want no child left behind. If we ignore No Child Left Behind, we get hit with $110 million. They'll take it out. And so part of the movement is, in the state of Utah, we have more than enough natural resources. When the state of Utah became a state, part of the Utah Enabling Clause says that all the federal land was supposed to be privatized. Now, first off, 5% of those gross receipts were supposed to go to for education. So you keep 80%, well, about 70% of the state of Utah is owned by the federal government. If they would have done what they were supposed to do, just think of the amount of money we would have for education. But more importantly, that money would be, that land would be in the public, or the private realm where we would be making money for the state of Utah. And so part of what we're going to do actually this next session is actually pass laws, not resolutions. You know, we're getting lots of emails about pass this resolution. Well, we actually passed that same resolution that's going around, you know, that Alaska just did and Atlanta or Georgia just did about 10 years ago. That's not done any good. We have to be willing to step up and say, hey, we need to allocate about $5 million to start fighting these things in court. I actually really believe that if you put the right case in front of the Supreme Court right now, as long as the 4 conservative and the 1 fairly conservative, if you get the right case in front, you could get some of those rights. And so that's what we're going to do. But it's going to take some money to fight those. And so that's what we need you to do, is say to your state representatives or state senators, hey, I think this is so important that I'm willing to spend $5 million in state resources to fight the federal government. But what will happen this next session is the education lobby, the Health and Human Services people will say, hey, you're taking $5 million to fight this battle when we could really use the money. So you can do a lot. Just a word about the email. I make about $15,000 a year. I spend 2 days a week. We're a part-time legislator. So the amount of money I get is about $15,000. I get about 200 emails a day. Best thing you can do when you send emails to your local senator or representative is put your address in the subject line. Then you'll read it, because frankly, that's all I have time, because I have to go out and try to make it. Actually, my full-time job is a real estate developer. And as you can imagine, it's not the best time in the world to be in the real estate sphere. And so, but most of us are like that. But we are actually looking at passing laws, constitutional amendments. There's already a constitutional amendment for healthcare that's being drafted right now. But make sure that you know, let your representatives and senators know, because they will be challenged. And one of the best ways to kill a bill is to say, well, it's going to be challenged and it's going to cost money. Well, I think it's about time that we stand up to the federal government. But it's going to cost money.
I came here after reading yesterday on KSL.com about the $300 million that we were getting in stimulus money. And I got pretty upset about it, because that's money that, whether through our non-use of these, what should be our lands, or taking my tax dollars, now the government in its benevolence is going to give that money back as long as we use it the way they say that it should be used. This is done with our roads. As long as you build the road to our standard and the way we want to do it and use the proper signs, then we'll give you the money. Like, we're a bunch of dumb children that have to be given, here's your rent money, you can pay your rent this month. And I'm sick and tired of it. I can do for myself, and everything that the government does for me that I should be doing for myself is robbing me of my future, my freedom, and my right to live the way I decide to live.
I actually agree, because I was sitting up at the Capitol, and I heard something I never thought I would have heard in the state of Utah. I heard one of the senators, somebody from rural Utah, was giving a presentation about how they've been hurt economically, and they were coming to the state basically for some economic development aid. And I asked the question, if the federal government got out of your hair, would you need that? And they said, absolutely not. But one of the senators said, you need to tell your conservative friends that they need the government's help. They need to come up and ask for help. And it is. It takes away that rugged individualism that we're based on. But like you said, the difficulty is everybody says that we want to not take federal money, but as soon as we don't, you're going to have to help prop up the spine of a number of representatives and such.
We elect you to protect our rights and not to tell us that, oh, well, you should come begging.
No,
and that is completely unacceptable.
I agree completely.
Can we secede with Texas?
Actually, unfortunately, as far as secession does, Texas actually does have, they came in as a nation. You stated Utah didn't, and so, but I wish we had in our bill, like Montana has, if the Second Amendment is ever overturned, Montana does have the right to succeed.
I'm troubled by a statistic that I've heard from more than one source. I've heard it said that the number of U.S. deaths per 100,000 people is higher than 15 other developed countries who have socialized medicine. I know there's got to be something wrong with that statistic. Can you tell me what it is?
Yes. Alcohol and autos. When you take alcohol and autos out of the American mix, we're near the top. Well, we drive more miles, and we drive more miles drunk. And so people die young. They add that in, and our life expectancies goes down. But you know what? It just went up 2 years. 78 now. Japan is at 81, and they're at the top of the list. So, look, we're 3 years off of the #1 country. We're not doing too badly. Don't let them scare you.
And the other thing also though, it's a result of freedom. People are going to make stupid choices when they have freedom. They're going to eat too much, or they're going to drive drunk. And so, the other way that we get rid of that is that we tax fatty foods, or some of those nations have that. Personally, I'm willing to die younger if I have the right to choose to get in my car. That's the first thing I do when I come back from Europe, is to get in my car, because to me that represents.
That sounds like what Patrick Henry said. He'd rather die than not have his liberty too.
Right.
I'll take 3 years.
A comment and a question. Funny you guys talked about perceptions of politics. When I lived in California, my mother and my family thought I was a John Birchwood. That's how conservative I was. My wife thinks I'm a commie Pico degenerate. I think I must be something. My question is this. If it works that well, and it does work that well, the American system is based on, why are medical schools limiting the amount of people that they allow in? I do not understand why, and chopping, not just limiting, but cutting back on what they used to have. It would seem to me that when doctors are in the system, the less medical care should be. You're a good example.
Yeah, there's truth in that, and part of the reason is in cost, because the government does subsidize the cost of medical education. Part of it is in the amount of clinical experience that any particular institution can provide. Now, it's not that there aren't ways around that, but I'm saying, like, for a residency position in surgery, you have to have a required number of appendectomies and gallbladder surgeries in order to graduate qualified to be a surgeon or anything else. And in any particular institution, there's only so many of those to go around, and they are reviewed constantly to make sure that they are keeping those numbers. So you could build more medical schools, you know, and that would be a way to graduate more physicians, and there's no reason why we can't do that.
I kind of disagree with your statement that the state of Utah does not need to make a resolution. I believe that the state of Utah needs to make a bold statement, not just to notify the federal government as to how we feel, but to educate the populace. There's probably only 1 out of every 10 people that haven't had even an inkling the state's created the federal government. They think we are, everybody you will interview will think we are agents of the federal government. They don't understand what's going on here. And I know we passed one in 1995. It was early namby-pamby, really kind of asked the federal government to stop. Please stop, federal government. We need a stronger one than that. And at the same time, before you start going into session and trying to pass bills by not accepting money, you're going to have some support out here. And that means you're going to have to let people know why you're doing it. What's the big picture? And if you don't have a resolution, there will be a resolution when we go through this next legislative session to be presented to the Senate. It has to be there and prior to what you want to do with bold actions as legislators thereafter.
Well, and that's where I guess, you know, we disagree. Again, that would come down to fundamental philosophy of government. I actually think that that's your responsibility and my responsibility. I've spent a lot of time coming to town hall meetings and things like that. That word has to get out through the public. The government, you have to be a little bit careful if the government's just issuing a resolution just purely for a public statement. You know, I agree that it's important, but what will happen with that is that a lot of people will go and pat themselves on the back and say, I passed a resolution this time. They'll go back to their voters and say, you know, next election cycle and say, I passed a resolution. And we're beyond, we have maybe 1 or 2 election cycles left. If we don't get something done, laws, you see what happens is a resolution, even if it's worded strongly, it means, I know everybody up on the hill knows it means everything or nothing. Washington knows it means nothing. What means something is actually a law that is passed that says, hey, who is the sovereign of the state? Is the state of Utah the sovereign, or is the federal government? Who has the right to...
The individual is, excuse me.
Okay, where do we get the power? The power ultimately comes from the people. It's supposed to come from the people. But do the people give their power to the state, or does it give it to the federal government? And so what we'll do, we'll pass a number of laws of who has eminent domain authority. Why is eminent domain authority important? Is if the state of Utah has eminent domain authority, then we can go and say, hey, we want access to the school trust lands that are in the state of Utah. Right now we have a bunch of school trust lands scattered throughout the state. We can't get access to them because there's oil shale, there's a whole bunch of natural resources, but we can't get access. If the state all of a sudden passes a law that says, hey, we have eminent domain authority, it's going to be challenged in court. But if we can get eminent domain authority, we can stop being dependent on the federal government. Because the fact of the matter is, as much as I would like to be able to say I can do away with $5 billion next year and not take any federal money, we realistically can't do that. We've got to start ratcheting up our own natural resources. And so, and it's not that I don't disagree that a resolution is important, but a lot of people, right, over the last 3 or 4 months have felt good because resolutions have been passed. And the federal government is sitting there laughing, saying, hey, stave these guys off a little bit. They've worked up this energy to pass a resolution. It's not binding. It's not going to do anything for us. And
I understand that. The purpose of the resolution is not to tell the federal government how we feel. The purpose of the resolution is to educate the public as to how we are going to proceed in the future. To let the public know. Then you make a big deal of that in the beginning. That's why the governor of Texas got a press conference with 30 people behind him. It's on YouTube 1 million times being viewed across the country. The education he came to have from the public was monstrous. If you expect as a legislator making $15,000 a year to be the only ones working on this, I don't think you're going to work. You're going to need the people behind you.
well, that's why we've worked with the 912ers. The Patrick Henry Caucus has worked with the 912ers. Tea Party people have been great. We have about 6,000 people nationwide, and I strongly encourage you to go to the patrickhenrycaucus.com. It'll help you find your local representative, your state representative. But the only way that we're going to be able to get that is if individual state reps and state senators feel the pressure, just like you're challenging me now, you need to do to your local state rep and local state senator. But don't let them think that, hey, all I expect this time is a resolution. Because if it's only a resolution, then frankly, I think it does more harm than good.
But we as the people want to know what you are resolved to do going into this. If you don't go into it without a plan, you want you to go into it knowing this is the way we as a people believe. So the resolutions come from the people. It's not going to be legislative. We want to be established that.
When you pass the law, the people will know.
Right.
You don't need to pass a resolution to get their attention. You pass the law, and they'll get the idea.
Because there will, I guarantee you, the Deseret News, the Standard Examiner, the Salt Lake Tribune, when we pass a law that's going to have a $3 million fiscal note because of legal challenges, they will be opining that we are wasting taxpayer money. And everybody will know about it and know why about it, but we will get a tremendous amount of pressure, and I guarantee you, a lot of representatives and senators will cave when they see that $3 million fiscal note that's there because we've passed a law specifically designed to challenge the federal government.